So if you look at a map of the world like this, you can see this is showing, with dots where people are in the world. So you can see how densely populated different parts of the world are. And a map like this is really useful for understanding population because you can learn like what are the trends, where do people live in the world, right? There's 7 billion people in the world. Where are they? So according to this map, they're pretty like there's some pretty common patterns here. First, you can see that there's way more people that live in India and in China and that sent that piece of Asia and Indonesia than anywhere else in the world. Or you can see it like India here looks like it's colored in, whereas the rest of the world has all these dots, right? It's just there's so many dots in India that there's just that many people. And so it's kind of interesting to look at this because you can see and think about like what are the trends that we're seeing, right? Based on this, most people live within sort of a band across the world that like not necessarily like right on the equator, but kind of close to it, right? That band right there, that comes up a couple times because of agriculture. That's where things grow really well. So there's a lot of people that live there. The other thing that you can see is that most people tend to live near water, right? Like on coasts or near some sort of water source. That makes sense, right? So trade is a lot easier when you live on the water. So you can definitely see a distribution pattern in terms of where people are in the world. And the reason why I'm getting into this first is because, to really understand population pyramids and like why you need them, you have to kind of look closely too at just in general, where are people in the world and why do they live there and what does that mean? So there's a couple of factors that come up. And this is some good stuff here that, if you're taking notes, this is a good thing to write down. So why do people live in different parts of the world, right? So we talked about a few of them based on that last map. One of them is natural resources. People tend to live in places where there are resources, right? And they don't live in places where there aren't. So based on this map, you can see like Northern Africa, that's a desert. That's the Saharan desert. And so there aren't that many people that live in the desert because there aren't that many resources for survival. All the like north up here, Canada, Siberia up there, there's people that live there, but there aren't a lot because it's cold, right? So people tend to live in climates that are, hospitable. You don't want to live in a place that's too hot like the desert or too cold like the tundra, right? Like the Arctic. Another thing that you can see here too, and you can even see like in the desert in Australia too, most people in Australia live on the coast of Australia. So that's part of the reason, that's one thing that you can keep in mind. Another reason of why people live where they live is socioeconomics. So if you don't know what socioeconomics are, this is a really important term for human geography. This is, your status in society based on social factors like gender, race, class, and then your economic opportunities. That's more likely class, but that's like how much money you have, how much money it costs to live in a place, right? So people live in places that have more opportunity, sometimes there's more people that live there. Another reason is political decisions, right? So people move based on politics. So in some cases, if there's like a war, people are going to move away from that region. If there is the like government decides to put some kind of military base somewhere, that will generate people will move there, right? And then the last thing is just accessibility, just like how do you get to places, right? More people are going to live, where you can easily have transportation than in like desolate areas, right? There's more opportunity, there's more places to work. So no matter what, wherever people live, the reason why population, we talk about this early in the year, is because there's a lot of implications for it. And I only put 3 up here. There's a lot. It kind of comes up in every single unit that you're going to talk about, right? So in terms of, culture and like where people live and what culture they have and what that means for the like environment there, like that plays a role. And so that's going to come up when you talk about culture. It comes up when you talk about infrastructure and services. Where people live, they're going to build things, right? And those things have implications. Same thing with resources. People live in places and they use up resources. They might harm their environment. And then lastly is politics. So like where people live affects things like voting and redistricting and who's there, who's voting for people. So, these are a couple of the implications for population distribution. And, like just to go back to this map one more time, the fact that we have so many people in the world that live in this region has implications, right? It puts a lot of stress on those regions. It makes it so that, resources could be hard to come by. Infrastructure is affecting more things have to be built. And so that affects the environment. How do you govern 1 billion people? Like, that's not easy. So, that all those things have effects, and that's part of this whole debate. That's part of this whole conversation is where do people live? Why do they live there? And what does it mean because they live there?